delighted to open this summit with Patrick Pouyanné, the chairman and CEO of TotalEnergies. Patrick has huge experience in energy. As you will know, as the leader of TotalEnergies, he is also at the forefront of energy transition. Patrick, you recently showed your ambition to be a global leader in the energy transition when Total became TotalEnergies. Of course, our focus today is on hydrogen. How will the use of hydrogen specifically help you in your mission?
First of all, Dominique, I'm very happy to be here with you, and so thank you for inviting me to participate to this summit. Yes, that's true that everything that will help to decarbonize and bring more energy is important for TotalEnergies. And hydrogen is a good candidate for sure. But before just speaking hydrogen, I would like to say a few words on the change of name from identity from Total to TotalEnergies. This new identity and new logo embodies the course that we want to be. We want to be a world-class player in the energy transition and more specifically among the top 5 of the renewables producer. Our company has become a broad energy company, committed to producing and providing energies, all sorts of energies, that must be affordable, reliable and clean. Hydrogen is one of the 7 energies which are today represented in our new logo, that shall help us to reach the carbon neutrality ambition that we have. In TotalEnergies, we have quite a good knowledge about hydrogen because in fact we consume today and we produce 1% of the hydrogen demand in our refineries. However, hydrogen is very particular for several reasons, as you probably all know. It's not a primary energy. Hydrogen is the result of an industrial process. Second remark, hydrogen demand is in fact today quite small, 70 million tons, and 95% of hydrogen is produced from fossil fuels. Third remark, which is important, when you produce 1 ton of hydrogen from natural gas, you produce 10 tons of CO2. So you cannot think about hydrogen without thinking on the way you produce it. And fourth remark, important, hydrogen demand is quite small today just because it's expensive. In fact, the cost of hydrogen, which is produced from fossil fuels, is 3 times more expensive than natural gas. So it has some handicaps. So why do we speak today of hydrogen? Because it has potentially quite a bright future in the decarbonized world, in a no-carbon world. And it should be quite a good contributor to the carbon neutrality ambition, providing obviously that we can, of course, produce it at a very competitive cost. So what can be the uses of hydrogen? First, it can help to decarbonize some industrial sectors like refining, chemicals, fertilizers. So that's a first point. Hard to abate industries in terms of CO2 emissions. The second one, of course, it can be mixed with natural gas in order to, I would say, lower the carbon intensity of natural gas, adding hydrogen in natural gas networks. More interestingly for me, it's also a way to store energy. You know, when we produce, and Total will produce more and more renewable electricity, you will have to store part of this electricity generated when sun is high or wind is strong. And hydrogen is a good storage for electricity, and that's fundamental. But, and I'm going from least important to most important, I would say, when we think to transportation and the way to decarbonize transportation, we speak about, of course, EVs and electricity. But obviously, there are some, in particular, heavy duties, truck fleets, train already, maybe plane, where hydrogen can be very fundamental, one of the best energy carrier. Honestly, when I think to the heavy duty, in particular transportations, trucks, batteries are heavy, hydrogen should be the solution. And so we need to think to that as a real energy carrier. And the longer term view is that maybe for planes, for example, we can envisage hydrogen for, I would say, a short trip up to 1,000 miles. Airbus is working on it. For longer trip, for transatlantic plane flight, we will need liquid fuels. So can we produce e-fuels, the dreams? It's a combination of CO2 and hydrogen coming from renewables. That's the future, probably. So that's something on which we need to think. But obviously, if we want to lower the cost from $5 per kilo to $1 per kilo. I mean, the cost of natural gas, this will require, I would say, a change of scale. This is, for me, the main message. Change of scale is obviously the key. Like we've done in the past, by the way. In the past, Total was a pioneer in what we LNG industry, liquefied natural gas, 40 years ago. Technologies were there, but there was a lack of demand market. And so we managed to lower the cost because we scale up all these technologies. And I think this might be, for me, the future role of TotalEnergies, to become a massive producer of hydrogen. And this, of course, will come because renewables are more competitive. The capex for electrolyzers are going down. And that should allow to open this new, I would say, world of hydrogen and economy of hydrogen for the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So now tell me, what does clean hydrogen mean for you?
That's an interesting debate. You know, there is plenty of colors there, like not like my color, because we don't have the gray, but we have the blue and the green in my color, and the yellow, by the way. So we speak about gray hydrogen when it's produced from fossil fuels, but it emits a lot of CO2. So it's not obviously an option. So we need to think to other ways. Either we go from natural gas, fossil fuels, and we produce hydrogen, and we capture all the CO2, that's what we call the blue hydrogen. It costs five times more today than natural gas. It's maybe not the Graal, because still you will have to find huge gas CO2 storage. The other one is a green hydrogen, which is coming from renewable energies. In fact, it's you produce electricity from solar and wind, and you have electrolyzers, you transform water in hydrogen with electricity. There, the cost today is 10 times more, because producing, and we know it today, we don't produce hydrogen from water because it's expensive, more expensive than for natural gas. But in the future, with scale and having the cost of solar and wind energy going down, it's possible. So there again, developing the scale, market scale is fundamental. Blue hydrogen, as I said, will require to find very large CO2 storage. So of course, Total is very strong we know where to find very low-cost natural gas in Russia, in the Middle East, in North Africa. But we need to find as well these large CO2 storage. And so that's the next target. By the way, it's a new job for my geologists, maybe not finding oil and gas anymore, but finding where to store CO2. You know, you can, transformation is also new métier in our companies. On the green hydrogen, there it's clearer. Finding space location where you can produce wind energy at a very low cost with a lot of wind, not necessarily connected to the grid, but just having a lot of wind. Patagonia might be an example in Chile, southern Chile, or large solar farms, desert of Mauritania, next to a coast in order to be able to export. And then combining that with progress in electrolyzers farms, that might be, I think, the best solution for the future. Of course, we'll have to think also to the transportation of hydrogen. People do not know, but today nobody transports hydrogen. So there is nothing. And one of the challenges of an area to invest is the logistics for hydrogen, because there is no hydrogen carrier, there is no hydrogen networks, everything has to be invested. This is why sometimes you hear people speaking about ammonia, because ammonia is a cousin, I would say, of hydrogen, and you can transport more easily ammonia. You have the logistics already. Ammonia, by the way, can be used to decarbonize coal-fired power plants, and Japanese are thinking to that market, and that might be a way to begin to start this new industry. So I think the fight for climate change is just requires all options, all solutions today. We should not select too much. We must push blue, green. Some will speak about yellow, coming from nuclear, not TotalEnergies, because I don't know that word. But I think it's important because we need to accelerate again the cost reduction by developing the market.
Thank you. And how do you think the international market for hydrogen will develop?
I think it will develop again if government, policymakers are able to develop the demand. I mean, fundamentally today, if we believe in it, because again, people think a lot about the supply side, but there is no way to invest in supply and to invest in very large plants if we do not have the demand. So today it's a chicken and egg. The energy transition, I think something is wrong in many mindsets. They think that we can make the transition if we produce more renewables. It's only a supply story. It's not true. Again, hydrogen is a perfect example. The demand is small. So if we want to grow this market, demand is essential. And then policymakers can help. Because they can, for example, say, in Europe, you will have in all natural gas networks, you should inject 5-10% of hydrogen. You create a market. Or like they've done with EVs, for transportation, they could create regulations which would force the new truck generation beyond 2030 to become hydrogen driven, you know. Trains might be another. So there are ways to help this demand to come, and then mobility is important. That's why within Total we are beginning to invest. You probably noticed that very recently we have decided to invest in something which is not so natural, in a taxi fleet in Paris. Why? Because captive fleets are very interesting. If you have a captive fleet, we will have at least 600 taxis driven by hydrogen in Paris. So not only it's good for our reputation and the image, but also for working. It creates a momentum, it creates a market, and then you can begin to lower the cost of producing hydrogen. So that's something on which I think is important. In Germany, we are part of the H2 mobility networks in order to develop also some hydrogen stations for the future. The infrastructure, I mean, I speak about chicken and egg with demand and supply. There is another important part, and I think Ardian is strong in it, which is the infrastructure. You know, EVs today, one of the limitations, and there is always a call to government because car manufacturers are willing to produce more and more EV fleets, but there is no infrastructure, charging points, etc. Hydrogen will be the same story. So we need to find the right leverage to demonstrate, to develop as well the whole infrastructure for hydrogen.
Yes. Do we need specific rules or regulations to help the international trading of hydrogen?
Yes, definitely yes. I think we need it. It will not come alone from the private investments because, again, every investor, even if you can see some technologies developing, emerges, again, scale is important. So governments, policymakers, like in all, I would say, in all this energy transition. Of course, you need investors, entrepreneurs, innovations. That's fundamental, and that's our jobs, I would say, as companies. But you need also to force the customers, because the customers, you know, as I said in my introduction, they want fundamentally, yes, they want a clean energy, but they want an affordable, cheap energy. That's clear, everybody. And so if you don't force a little these people to accept to pay a little more before you see the cost going down, the demand will not be there. So that's, I think, a clear call. It's strange for me as a private entrepreneur to call for it, but I think the energy transition will need this support. And so I think, as I said, hydrogen will be a game changer. I'm convinced of that. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but you know, in this energy transition, there is a sort of exponential acceleration, what I have observed. By the way, I would have not believed that I would have transformed my company Total when I became CEO 5 years ago in TotalEnergies today. So, you know, world is changing, society is changing, and so we must all change. And so, by the way, you, Dominique, what made you choose to dedicate a summit to hydrogen today?
For us, the reasons are clear and simple. Firstly, the role of hydrogen in the energy transition is now widely recognized. The hydrogen value chain is firmly a part of sustainable finance. Everyone recognizes that hydrogen will play a key role in our future. Secondly, sustainability is at the heart of Ardian's culture. All of our processes take ESG into account. We have incentives for the managers in our portfolio companies based on ESG criteria. Third, simply, it is essential. As a private investment house, we are convinced that the most sustainable companies will have the greatest long-term value to all stakeholders. As a pioneer in renewable energy investments, we know there will be a first-mover advantage for strategic investors. Why host this summit, you ask? Well, we know that hydrogen will play a key role in our future, but many people need to come together to make it happen. The question now is, how do we mitigate the remaining risks to investing in hydrogen? To answer this question, we will need a combination of three factors. One, industrial players working together across geographies, like you. Two, the right level of government and regulatory support. And three, investors with a vision for sustainability. This is why we have gathered the most prominent players from these three fields for the summit today. Patrick, I would like to warmly thank you for the time you have given us today to start our wider discussions about this very important topic. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for inviting me to this hydrogen and ESG summit. TotalEnergies is very committed, and I have no doubt that with the quality of the guests which will speak about me, all your colleagues and people participating will have a very exciting discussions. And thank you again, Dominique.
Thank you, Patrick.